Hey, this is the Proactive Podcast, our first session, right off the cuff, no scripts. So today, and as always, we're talking about sports chiropractic. This is information for the athletic population that want to learn about, our take on athleticism, living well, being healthy, fitness and exercise, all that jazz. So we got Kevin here,
Woo.
Dr. Kevin, and Dr. Alex.
Hey guys.
All right. So, big topics for us today are working from home. Everybody's kind of caught at home right now with COVID, and we're getting a lot of people coming in that just don't know how to adapt to honestly just working at home. Like, people just weren't meant to sit at home for 6 to 10 hours a day looking at a computer screen, and their bodies are screaming in pain from it.
Yeah, honestly, it's like a new reality. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the patients that we see, it's just like all of them are kind of like, oh, what should I do? It's the first couple of months, they're like, yeah, let's just work from the dining table or like the counter. Or like, I had one person who was just like literally was like squatting using their coffee table, like sitting on this dinky little stool trying to work. And
It's horrible.
yeah, it's crazy because it just keeps going on. So I guess, we should probably really chat about like, what should we really do?
It's the poorest working conditions, and literally everybody you talk to is like, it's just temporary. Like, it's like, okay, well, COVID's been around for like a year and a half, for a year now, and
foreseeably keeps going with all these variants.
Yeah.
foreseeably, yeah, and also even when you're not working from home, you're still spending hours on your computer, playing video games, watching TV, whatever, and like this is all stuff that is gonna value you regardless of what you're doing, right? You're spending time at home sitting down.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, completely agree. Like, a lot of people were thinking this would be a temporary thing. First lockdown was gonna be like 2 weeks or like a month or whatever. And so same as what Dr. Kevin was saying, that a lot of people have had these temporary fixes. They didn't even try to make a desk. They haven't even started to get into a new routine. They're just always seen it as temporary. And I totally agree with what you're saying, that the issue isn't just the fact that their desk setup isn't great and that they have poor posture and all these issues, but it's also just the fact that they're at home all day. And so even when you get off of work or whatever, you're still playing video games or you're sitting on the couch, and it's just that combination. Like, at least when you have a normal routine, you go to work, like, you kind of get up and naturally move around a little bit more. But if you're just at home all day, like, that's tough.
yeah, it brings up a good point, because I've had a patient coming in for a disc herniation, and he works in like Stockhouse at Costco, and we've gone over lifting for him, and he's been real precautious about what he's doing and trying to not lift and use the forklift more, whatever. Anyways, he noticed that it was on the weekend, like his day off on Sunday, the following day he's in a ton of pain, and I'm like, that's weird. Did you do anything? He's like, I did nothing. Like, I just stayed at home and just took it easy all day so I wouldn't hurt myself. And it was like, okay, well, were you sitting all day? Were you sitting on your couch? Were you sitting in a way that's going to put pressure on your discs? And it was kind of a huge revelation for him, and just noticing, like, wow, it's like patients don't connect the dots, right? They can spend several hours in a position and then a couple hours later notice a ton of pain, and they have no idea why, right?
I mean, all along they're just sitting there, and they're just like,
Well, they're doing nothing.
How could this cause pain for you? Like, that's exactly what causes pain.
Right.
Exactly.
And I've been treating a lot of truck drivers too, and like, I'm just like, you guys know that this is harder on your body than like working construction? Like,
Yeah,
just
definitely.
It is. Like,
It's crazy.
Being a truck driver, driving 10 hours plus a day, like,
Yeah.
it's going to kill you.
100%. And that's a super common thing we hear from patients all the time. No one ever does anything. No one ever like has an injury. Like, no one ever actually does anything. But then you're like, okay, well, let's dig into this a little bit more. Like, what did you do on the weekend? How are you sitting? How were you sleeping? How was your desk set up? Did you do something unusual? Did you just do more than usual? Like, there are all of these little factors that always add up. And for patients, a lot of times you have to illustrate that to them so that they realize, they're like, yeah, I didn't do anything, but I was putting a lot of pressure on my back for like 12 hours yesterday. Like, oh, that totally makes sense, you know?
Or like the other thing would be like, oh, I was watching TV last night, and oh yeah, oh yeah, I did fall asleep on the couch and woke up
Exactly.
at like 4 a.m. when my neck was like kinked.
Yeah.
Right, and they don't view that stuff as significant. They're like, no, it's a write-off. They don't consider that it's relevant. Yeah, totally.
Well, so I mean, yeah, I mean, going back to what you're saying, Dr. Alex, I mean, like this whole routine, like working from home, like routine's been totally thrown off, right? Where you're used to waking up a little bit earlier, you know, commuting to work, whether driving or walking or biking, and you know, now we don't have any of that. Like, what do you think about this whole routine thing?
I think it's a huge kind of disruption for people, and a lot of times they don't even realize it. A lot of times a lot of the good habits that like take willpower to do are so much easier to do when they're just habits, right? You wake up at a certain time, you go to the gym, you eat whatever for breakfast, like you go to work, you set your day around what these habits are, and they become so natural and so easy. And this just shows how much your routine can be disrupted by like the smallest things.
Yeah.
And it's not even necessarily anything different. It's just the fact that you're just not used to it is what it is. It's just that little shift in routine, and then maybe you wake up a little bit later, and maybe you don't shower and get changed every day, like if you're working from home, like just different things like that. People don't realize how much that throws them off in the long term, but all those things definitely add up.
And I think for a lot of patients that come to see us, I guess a lot of the value comes out of exposing that routine that has such an impact. Like I'm asking about people's sleep, and they're like, I don't know, like I don't pay attention to how I sleep.
I'm asleep.
I'm asleep the whole time. How could I know, right? And then I wake up, and then this and that, and it's like, okay, that's cool. I get it. People just fall asleep. But if you're dealing with like a chronic recurrent issue, this is contributing. So if you want to get out of it, you might have to take a little bit of initiative to see how you're sleeping and kind of take control of that. And it's not impossible. A lot of people do it. It just takes a little bit of conscientiousness to kind of be like, yeah, I can, correct this, and it's not that hard. Especially when the problem is coming back or not getting 100% fixed.
Right. So I mean, so then the question is then, is it that we need to establish a new routine, or do you think we need to like go back to the old routine and try and mimic what we used to do, or like how do we go about it?
I think that you should try to mimic whatever your like normal regular life routine is. I know that's tough. One thing that I've heard people suggest is just having that mental break, like that mental separation between work and home is a huge thing for a lot of people. Like, you take your morning commute, you got your coffee, like whatever, you have your routine, you get to work, you do whatever you do when you get to work, and you're in that mindset, you're productive, and you get your work done. As soon as you're finished, you head home, again, commute home. It's a nice like separation, and then you go home, hang out with your family, watch TV, like whatever it is. But the issue is if you're just at home, especially like 24 hours a day, there's no separation from the two. Yeah. So it's a lot easier to fall out of those routines because you're like, oh, I'm at home, like I'll get it done later, or like different things like that. And so sometimes even just like getting up to go for a walk, like simulating kind of that change in mindset from I'm at home to I'm at work, and then I'm back at home again can be really helpful.
I think, that's almost getting into the mental health aspect of it, where like people can't categorize their brain anymore, where it's like, okay, I'm at work, this is work mode, and then they can kind of shut that off and fill their buckets in other aspects, like go for a jog or whatever it is, go to the gym, but everything's kind of just getting mixed into one, like all work for 20 minutes, then go do the dishes, then go, stand on the balcony, get up fresh air, run back, do some more work. Like, I mean, it's good to take breaks, but
it's just weird.
You're right. I mean, it's like there's already a couple patients that were like, yeah, they used to go on a jog in their lunch break, but now the lunch break they're like, oh, I'm at home, might as well do some vacuuming, do some laundry, and it's just they just fill their mental break with other chores. And so then when you're saying like, okay, we're now working from home, I wake up at home, so do I like leave and then come back home in these mental breaks, or what do I do?
You can. That's an easy way to do like a break, like especially if it's a shorter break, it might just be getting up and stretching and maybe just walking around really quick. But walking, changing posture, getting that little bit of exercise, like even just 10 minutes, even if you were to go outside a couple times a day, just walk around your block, come back in, people wouldn't believe the benefits from something as simple as that. Both like mental, physical, they're more productive. Like people don't realize taking breaks makes you more productive.
Yeah.
They think they want to be working all the time and push, push. But if you have sick days later on, or like you're becoming less and less productive because you're more stressed out, in the long run, you're really just not as productive. Just take a 15-minute break, go for a short walk, stuff like that.
And yeah, like we can talk about ergonomics all day, and you can have the perfect setup, but at the end of the day, your body just wasn't meant to sit all day. Like we weren't designed to be sedentary animals, and like it's kind of the way it's pushing. So yeah, like get a proper desk setup, get active, get moving, take mental breaks. That's really the only way to get through this, especially if this is the future. If we're not going back from this, if people are working from home as their new lifestyle, like we're gonna have to adapt, and that's a really cool role for us because we can kind of step in and be like, look, like this is not as easy as it sounds working from home all day. There are things you want to do if you want to keep your physical and mental health straight. So these are some of them.
Nice. Okay, so let's say, I get up and walk around the block every now and then. Just give myself, like, I really like that tip. Get yourself some fresh air, get your body moving, even see some sun, get some vitamin D in you. But,
yeah.
But inevitably you're going to come back, you're going to sit down. Like, what is the desk setup? Everyone's always always asking us that, like, what is the desk setup? I have my work laptop, I got my dining chair. It's like, hey, is that good enough?
The laptop alone is, because like I use a laptop, and it's like a lot of people nowadays are moving away from the desktop, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of tough because you're like, it's really not good to have your monitor and your keyboard an inch apart.
Like walk together, eh?
Yeah, totally.
There's in no situation is that, like, it's convenient, but and I never try to push our patients. Like, none of us try to push our patients to buy stuff unnecessarily, but for me it's kind of like, well, like a keyboard or a monitor is kind of the best way to fix this. Yeah. Along with obviously your chair set up and making sure everything is kind of placed in a well position. But yeah, everybody moving towards the laptops, or even a lot of people like work out of their bed laying down or whatever. And it's just like, you could do that, but don't do that for like more than 20 minutes at the most.
No, absolutely. Like, I mean, one of the key things, first of all, is like, you probably have a proper desk set up at work. A ton of patients are like able to go into their workplace and like steal the stuff, like literally like steal the monitors they got. Even sometimes you can steal the chair. So that's probably the first thing you always want to look for is like, what kind of equipment you can steal from work.
Well, what I started doing is just plugging my HDMI cord into my TV. I have a TV in my room on my desk, and
nice.
Any TV, which is all of them, with an HDMI cord setup, can be a monitor. So that's a really easy one where it's like, not that it's good to have a TV in your room necessarily, guilty, but you get that option at the least.
100%. And the biggest thing with the laptop is just the fact that you almost can't have good posture with it. The height that the keyboard is, there has to be some distance between the keyboard and the monitor. If you're setting everything up for the keyboard to be nice, the monitor is going to be too low, and you're going to be bending forward. Your neck posture is going to be bad.
Right.
And the inverse of that is that if you set it for the height of the screen properly, which should be around the top of your eyes, there's no way that your arms are going to be able to be low enough, right? They're going to be shrugged up the whole time that you're using them, and that's what causes a lot of tension, a lot of headaches, a lot of issues for people.
So let's say I have a laptop, which is the easier fix, to set the laptop higher or to and sacrifice my arms, or should I set the laptop down where my arms should be and sacrifice my neck?
What do you care more about, Dr. Kevin?
Slow and
What's the lesser evil here, right?
That's right.
It's like your neck or like your upper trapezius. Either way, they're not going to be happy. But yeah, that's a hard one.
But I guess depends on what you can steal, Like
Yeah, what you can get. Yeah, exactly.
like if you can get a keyboard, then obviously you can move your laptop up. But I
Yeah.
guess if you can get a monitor, then you can keep the laptop where it is and use it as a keyboard.
Yeah. I mean, given that scenario, if you don't have any other options, you have the laptop, I would probably suggest setting it for the keyboard height, making sure that the entire rest of your body is in good position and good shape. And then hopefully with most of your posture being pretty good, your neck isn't going to be that bad. But again, it's not ideal, right?
It's not ideal. But the big thing is also don't lean into it too much. Like, let yourself lean back. Like, hopefully your eyes are going to be okay looking from a little bit further away, but we just get so caught up and we get closer and closer to the screen. And then as soon as we start leaning forward, same thing in running, it's just everything falls apart.
Okay, so let's talk about when you're like ideally put the laptop ideally where it should be. Like what are we talking about here?
So ideally we have a monitor, right? So top of the monitor is like eyebrow level, correct?
Are we talking about like top of the monitor or like middle of the monitor?
Put it around, yeah. Like,
It should be top. Yeah.
Yeah.
top
really
of the
top,
monitor is
yeah.
eyebrow level, right?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
the idea is that you should be able to look with your eyes straight ahead or look with your eyes a little bit down
Gotcha.
on the screen. You shouldn't be putting your head forward. For some people that might also be an eye issue. Actually, people that are getting like eye strain,
Right.
sometimes they might need a different glasses prescription, something like that. They shouldn't have their face too close to the monitor.
Yeah.
And that also can be an issue.
And same thing goes for cell phones. Like, people are private and whatever, they have their cell phone down like around their hips while they're looking at it. Their head's looking straight down, and it's like they know it hurts their neck. They can feel it. People spend way too much time on their cell phones, and like obviously a cell phone is not something you can have an ergonomic setup with.
Right,
but like
yeah.
if you're able to hold it up a bit higher, right?
Yeah.
But people feel weird about that. I guess it would look weird to hold your cell
Yeah,
phone like eye level.
I mean, I guess you literally like I'm trying to chat with someone and the text comes and I just shove it right in front of your face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Clearly not talking to you.
Maybe you should get off your cell phone, Kevin.
That's right.
Maybe.
Come on. Show
Oh,
me some
I just got a
attention.
text. Didn't hear a thing you said.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay, keyboard. What are we doing? Like making sure our shoulders are like nice and relaxed, elbows down.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Are we playing that 90 degree game?
Exactly. 90 degrees is a safe bet when it comes to angles and the body.
It
right?
is. It's 90 degrees. There's a lot of 90-degree rules for things.
Okay,
so yeah,
90 degrees at the elbows. Wrists shouldn't be bent at all.
shouldn't be bent. They should, if anything, they should be maybe a little bit supported, but they shouldn't be excessively cocked back. You shouldn't have any tension in the elbow. You shouldn't have any tension in the wrist. You shouldn't have your shoulders shrugged up, which is a big issue for people, especially if you're using a mouse.
Super common.
Especially if you're using a mouse.
Just pull those puppies back and down.
Yeah.
And then where your hands rest, 90 degrees from there, like get the keyboard set up there.
Yeah.
Right?
Just
And then
keep
just
it relaxed.
last thing, just relax the shoulders. Like give yourself a moment to breathe. Namaste. And let those guys relax.
100% too. A lot of people don't realize kind of what the baseline of, I'll tell people like, oh, like bring your shoulders down, and they'll be like, I am. Like this is as far down as they get. I'm like, I promise you, it's not. Just take a deep breath, let your arms relax, let it hang.
Lay it down a notch.
Exactly, because like realistically, those little muscles that are on the top of your shoulders aren't supposed to be holding something for 8 hours at a time.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Those are supposed to be for throwing rocks and spears. Those are for like picking things up, everything like that. It's not for holding a little mouse for 8 hours straight, right?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because like there is for a lot of people like another like inch or two of undiscovered range of motion in their shoulders that they can actually depress them. Like they're so used to having them high up, they don't even realize. I'm like, look, if I like come over there and push your shoulders down, we can bring them down another inch. Can you hold them there? Some people just don't even know.
They didn't
Yeah,
realize.
they've never felt it, 100%.
That's all the stress, right?
It is, and
I
that's
mean, when you're stressed too and you're on the computer, you just naturally just want to just turtle up, shrug up,
yeah,
and you're like, oh my gosh, the guy hit this deadline, and
yeah.
yeah, then you're struggling, right?
And that's part of that routine. That's part of, helping to eliminate some life stresses. That's taking breaks. That's learning how to breathe properly. Like, all of that comes together. If your stress levels are high, yeah, so just as I was saying that if your stress levels are super high, it's natural for people to breathe up into their chest instead of down into their diaphragm, especially if it's stressed out about work, especially if it's the combination of working from home. And realistically, like, just the environment for everybody in the world the last year has been super stressful. So anything that you can do to kind of eliminate or bring that down is super beneficial.
That is a cool concept for our listeners too, the breathing. Like, breathing is huge. People that have that chronic neck tightness, and like you can just see their scalenes popping out of their neck, which is those muscles that attach onto your upper ribs, along with some other muscles that attach to your ribs. It's like your ribs is like a surplus or an accessory way of breathing, right? You want to use your diaphragm or belly breathe, and then if you're giving 110%, you can use those muscles to pull your rib cage open and close. The problem is people are just using that as their primary way of breathing, and that's why those muscles are constantly working to kind of work the rib cage when they shouldn't be, right? They need some downtime.
100%. Like, even if you're so out of breath, like, your diaphragm is not going to get tired. You will keep breathing. It is a huge muscle. It's the size of your entire torso, like cut in half essentially. And so you want that big muscle to do all the work for your breathing. You should make it as easy as possible. But the issue is that people breathe up into their necks. Like, I'm sure everybody knows people that have really defined neck muscles. Like, they can see that these muscles are getting worked, and a lot of times that's not ideal. You should use your big muscles for breathing rather than those little ones. Those little ones are only supposed to turn your head or anything like that.
Yeah, and it can be challenging for people that have like just chronically used those all the time to figure out how to turn them off. And I think the huge part of it is learning how to breathe properly, which many people kind of fall out of. But when you teach it to them, they almost instinctually like revert back. They're like, oh yeah, this feels right now, but they were totally off. And the other thing that I find is like try and strengthen the muscles that pull down those shoulders, right? Those middle lower traps, all that, because those are very weak in people that generally have this issue.
Okay, so we talked about monitors a bit, talked about keyboards. One of my personal favorites is chairs, actually. So something that ideally I like to see everyone have is one of those just chairs that just like go all the way right up to your neck, and you can support your head there, like the high back chairs. Those are so nice that you can just rest your head against and just keep that supported, so you're not like hanging your head forward. And honestly, like, I mean, again, not for like wanting you to buy new chairs, because I mean, we've got a ton of things at home. But yeah, I think like maybe 2 months ago, I picked myself up a high back chair from IKEA. I think it's definitely under $200.
What do you think? Worth it?
Yeah, definitely worth it. Like just to give your a neck or your head an anchor spot of where to be, where you could rest up against, and just kind of keep you kind of literally like strapped to the chair. And arguably actually keeps my shoulders more relaxed too. But yeah, I mean, that's, so again, high back, high neck chairs, key for me.
It's a nice luxury.
Yeah.
The problem is that people will be sitting on them and they're still leaning forward and they're still not. Right. So it's like, if you're going to invest in a chair, you got to learn how to use it, right?
Definitely.
People don't.
But then where those are, yeah, it's like it's I mean, it's similar to driving. Hey, like, I mean, we have those neck rests, but so many people drive like with their face like almost at the steering wheel.
Yeah.
But no, like those neck rests are meant to be there so we can just literally rest our head on them, so that, you know, it's a gauge point. It's like the anchor point, so that, you know, if we ever feel like, oh wait, frick, is my posture good? Like, yeah, just lean back until you hit something, which is your chair. Then you're like, there you go. That's where it should be.
Right. And I almost challenge people, because like telling people to hold perfect posture an entire day is like, they know they're not going to, and you kind of know they're not going to. But I always challenge people once they get in their car to be like, see if you can make it to your destination with your head back against the rest, with your shoulders down, right? See if you can make that 20-minute drive with proper posture. Like, I promise it'll feel more natural, and it's almost like a fun game that you can kind of play.
Yeah, no, honestly, it is practice makes perfect. But yeah, if you make it a game out of it, it's just like a challenge. You're like, man, I'm going to prove this Dr. Matt wrong.
Yeah.
Jeez, I can do this.
Exactly.
But I'll tell you, it is a challenge.
It is, but yeah, and people are like, they go into that proper posture position and like, this is so insanely awkward. I'm not going to be able to hold this. But it's like, what you don't know is you're slowly pushing the baseline for what feels normal. The more time you spend in that posture, the more your body wants to be in a more ergonomic and efficient posture, and it'll start to kind of feel more natural. We're not saying you're gonna be 100% in that posture all the time, but you're pushing you're fighting gravity basically, right? Like humans were meant to stand tall, right? And like if you look at like tribes, in Africa or whatever, their posture is like perfect, right? It's just we've kind of just got lazy. And a good way to think about bad posture is like, just imagine gravity 1, and like your curves are just starting to,
you're
become
compressing.
more and more, compressed.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Matt. Like I like the analogy of like the frog in like the pot of water, that if you throw a frog in a boiling pot of water, it'll obviously jump right out.
Right.
But if you put it in cold water and then just turn the heat up, that gradual change people don't notice over time. And so I think that's the biggest thing with posture, is whenever patients are coming in the clinic and I'm saying, okay, tuck your shoulders back, tuck your chin in, tuck your hips down, engage your glutes, they say, this feels awful. And I say, I know, because you have been slowly creeping away into bad posture day after day, year after year, and you don't notice that change at all. And so people are basically like, well, how am I supposed to watch my posture every hour of every day? It's like, you don't. Just start it with a little thing. Like the car thing, perfect. Just that little reminder. That's all people need a lot of times, is that little reminder. And then the frog in the water works the other way too. That every day that you do have that positive posture, it'll feel a little bit easier. And like Matt says, you're just fighting against gravity, and you're making the job harder for yourself, right? If everything's perfectly in line and your head is on top of your spine where it's supposed to be, you shouldn't have any issues, right? It's balanced perfectly on top. Like the bones are the ones that are supporting it, not these little muscles.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we want, right?
Yeah, that's a great analogy, the frog one. And yeah, it makes perfect sense. Like, what's easier for your body, to hold your head up above your spine or in front of your spine? Like, very simple concept. But Dr. Uchaz does a really cool thing that I know a lot of us kind of adopted, where he'll take pictures of his patients with their normal bad posture, correct their posture, and then take another pictures. And it's to show them, because when you adopt that correct posture, like, you feel so awkward at first for a lot of people,
and it feels like you don't want to look weird. Everyone says, I feel like I look weird. Nobody walks around like that.
Like they feel like they're like a stiff neck.
They do,
because when you feel awkward or you feel weird, then you think you look weird. But in fact, like, there's lots of research to suggest, like, people that have that correct posture, they kind of command a room, right? Like, people kind of
like
view
their confidence
them as
goes
more
up.
attractive. Yeah, confidence grows up. Even adopting a good posture works both ways. It can literally, like, quell the anxiety you might be having for a job interview or whatever, because you're showing yourself that you're confident. Like, you're showing yourself to the world, as opposed to curling up and kind of shrinking away in the corner.
But actually, I guess kind of like we were saying, when Dr. Uchas takes those pictures of like the perfect posture position that feels awkward, visually, they actually look great.
That's the key, is that
fantastic.
When they see that picture, the first picture, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe that's what I actually look like. I look horrible. And then when they say, well, this feels terrible, like, this good posture feels awful, and then you take a picture, they're like, oh, like, okay, like, literally, if that's what I look like, if that's what I feel like, I can accept that for sure.
Or they look at their, normal posture picture, their bad posture picture, and they're like, that doesn't look good. Like, I don't want to walk around like that. But that's what I have been walking around with. Sometimes you also just don't catch that side view, especially where people notice that their head is sticking way far out, and you're like, yeah, that doesn't look good either.
Exactly. And people, This is the thing is people always know. They'll come in and they'll say, I know I have bad posture. I know my neck's forward. I know my shoulders are rolled forward. But sometimes it just takes that illustration of what fixing it looks like. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I can really tell that my posture was really bad before. But good news, all I have to do is a couple of things, and over time it'll fix it.
Okay. So, okay, I mean, we got the perfect setup now. Got the monitor, the keyboard, got chairs in a good position. Okay, but seriously, like, I'm sitting all day and I got a deadline coming up. All right, Dr. Matt, favorite stretch, like, takes 2 seconds to do.
So my favorite stretch, or my favorite thing to show someone as far as posture is kind of like the Brugger's or Wall Angel, where you just get them against the wall and you go first, pull your shoulders back and down. Okay. Now tuck your chin and get your neck as flat against the wall as you can. Okay. Now contract your abs and get your thoracolumbar spine closer to the wall, right? So you're basically just trying to get your spine as flat against the wall as you can, and you inadvertently work all the muscles that are weak, like all the weak postural muscles, which is, glutes, abs, middle lower back muscles, and deep neck, frontal neck muscles, right? And you can also just kind of feel the spine working too to like get comfortable in that position, and that's what I pretty much prescribe anybody that's trying to work on their posture, because it's a catch-all as far as posture goes, and it's a catch-all as far as stretching muscles and getting them in their proper position.
I agree, and like a lot of times people, and the best thing is it's like the test and retest all in one. It's an exercise that if you continue to do it, your posture will get better, but it'll also show you how bad your posture is, because it sounds simple, but I bet if a lot of you go up and stand with your heels, your butt, your shoulders, your head, your elbows, and your hands all against the wall, there'll be something that will be pulling forward. Almost guaranteed. So for a lot of people, even just standing straight against the wall is hard.
So, like, sounds easy, but it's actually pretty difficult to even hold that position.
Exactly.
And it pushes a cool concept where, like, I'll be like, okay, and then I'll kind of put my hand in the small of their back, their thoracolumbar area, and I'll be like, okay, press your spine into my hand. And they'll do that, and then all of a sudden, like, their neck will come off the wall. I'm like, well, no, keep your neck against the wall. And they'll do that, and then they're like, oh, I can't,
I can't do both.
You take from one, and the other starts to go.
Yeah.
So it's like when you're correcting your posture, you have to be aware that if you're trying to overcorrect one area, that you're not totally letting the other area slip, because your spine is going to try and take from, whatever area it can.
Yeah, your brain is super, super smart, but all it wants to do is whatever you tell it. It will not do things the right way. It will not do things like proper form. It won't do things to prevent injury. It's pretty dumb. It says, okay, you want my neck to touch the back? That's fine. I'll just bend my lower back. And it's like, well, no, we want the lower back to be moving fine and the neck to be moving fine and all of those pieces so that your body isn't trying to take from other joints. Ultimately, that's one of the biggest issues that people have with postural issues or any issues at all, is that joints that aren't supposed to move too much, and joints that are supposed to move don't move enough.
Yeah. And that's why this is kind of a cool concept with chiropractics, where it's like, okay, like if certain areas of your spine, and oftentimes the cervical thoracic CT area where your neck meets your shoulders or your back, super stiff, well, the areas below and above are going to be working overtime to compensate. So they might be more mobile than they need to be, whereas some areas aren't. So if all the areas have correct motion in them, it puts less stress on the whole spine,
Right.
Yeah, a perfect example I see with that all the time. I'm sure almost everybody's had this before, but they wake up in the morning and they can't turn their neck. So they've either slept weird or their pillow's weird or whatever it was. Like I said, there's tons and tons of factors, but they'll wake up and they can't turn their neck. And everybody says it hurts in their neck. They have neck pain. They sometimes maybe even have headaches. But the problem is almost always lower down than that. The problem is almost always the upper back and the base of the neck, essentially, because that's where those big muscles are. And so that's a perfect illustration that if that's not moving properly, it almost doesn't matter what your neck's going to do. There's always going to be too much pressure on it.
That's a great point. But we got to wrap it up. We got some places to be, patients to treat. So thanks to all our listeners. You know, this is our first podcast. It's off the cuff. It's, you know, authentic. You know, we got Dr. Kevin here, Dr. Alex. My name's Dr. Matt or Dr. Georges. We're here, Calgary, downtown, Proactive Health Group. Come check us out if you're interested. Website, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. But once again, thanks to all our listeners. Anything else to add?
Cool.
Thanks a lot, guys.
We'll catch you next time.
Next time.
All right, next time.